So we'll go ahead, we'll get started. Before we turn the time over to Greg Valentino, who's going to do our presentation today, I will go ahead and turn the time over to Nils so he can do his little presentation, and then we'll reintroduce Greg.
Great. Thank you. Okay, let me open this. So I'm going to talk today about a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. Well, really not just about the book, but about the philosophy behind the book. So this is Serena Williams. She's arguably one of the best athletes to ever live, or most dominating in her sport. She's won, I think, more Wimbledons than anybody, which is the premier tennis tournament. And she said that the key to her victory is her mental game. And that's where she really excels. And that especially when she's needing to make a comeback or she's losing, that's when she calms down the most. And she says, I just focus on one point at a time, just the one point that's happening and then the next point. And she only focuses on what's happening. She tries to control her breathing, and she has an incredibly good inner game, a mental game. And so the idea is this is something that can be cultivated in everybody, the inner game. And so in 1974, a guy named Tim Galloway wrote this book called The Inner Game of Tennis, and it became a huge bestseller, and it still sells a lot of copies because it's not a tennis book. It's about the inner game of like any sport or any activity. And he has a huge industry now, inner game of work, inner game of golf, inner game of basically everything. Pro football coaches use his techniques and say that they've had incredible results with many of their players. Because the idea is to try to get into a relaxed concentration and to learn naturally and sort of get in that zone that, they describe athletes as, oh, he's unconscious or he's on fire, he's out of his head. That's getting into the zone, and you can set the stage for that to happen more spontaneously. And that's what this book is about. And it just sort of so happened to cross over with a lot of mindfulness techniques before that was even a thing in the United States. So one of the key aspects of the philosophy in this inner game is there is an inner game. There's a self one and a self two. So the self one is that speaker, that dialogue. Oh, hit it faster, hit it harder, get to the net, swing, follow through, all these kind of things that you're constantly judging yourself. And self two is kind of mute. It's your inner self. And that's who you're talking to, right? You're talking to your body, you're talking to your other part of your psyche. And so he says that athletes and everybody has this sort of division of one person talking to themselves. And the book is sort of focused around this dialogue. And the idea is self two is very critical. Generally, it's not it's more like a taskmaster than a supportive coach. It's someone kind of yelling at you for effing up and not doing it right and not focusing and pay attention. And it really does more harm than good in general. It takes you out of that zone. It puts you in your head. Okay, so self one are the thoughts and the criticisms, and it's not a very powerful network. It doesn't have a lot at its disposal other than the thoughts and the criticisms. It can't really control the body. If self one could control the body and all you had to say was, hey, look at the ball and hit it early, you would do it because self one would be in control, but it isn't. Self two is in control, and that's the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind, in terms of power and ability, is like a NASA supercomputer. It's the one that calculates the speed of the ball, understands if it's dipping or spinning, understands where to swing, when to swing, and it does it all without thoughts. So the self one, the one that you hear, is more like a Post-it note. It's like putting a little yellow sticky note on a supercomputer, and it doesn't help. Okay, so the art of relaxed concentration, an overview. First, there's visualization, sort of getting a clear picture, and seeing in a non-judgmental way, and trusting your unconscious self. Those are the three tenets of this book. So when kids are learning to walk,
my internet.
Oh, We can hear you. When kids are learning to walk, this is the perfect example of an inner game going well. There's no criticism, there's no judgment. They don't think, I really need to focus on my stepping, and I have to step out in front, and I really need to look at where I'm going. There's not all that inner judgment. There's not any thoughts of like, I should do this better. Little Timmy's already walking really well, and why can't I walk? It just kind of happens naturally. Kids learn naturally in the zone just by watching and observing and letting their body do what they do. They have a supercomputer without the interference of the self one. Or when a baby's trying to talk, it's not thinking, gosh, my syntax is really bad and I'm not conjugating verbs very well. And, little Billy is really verbal and he's 3 months younger than me, and what's going on? None of that stuff is there. They just babble and talk, and they learn by doing. So non-judgmental is one of the key things. And these are specific examples for what he tells athletes. So self one is the one saying, get down to the ball, get down to the ball. And that's not really helpful because self one talks and self two doesn't listen. So it's better just to notice the extent of your knee bend. And when people do that and they stop judging how well they're getting down to the ball and just think about, where are my knees when I'm reaching for the ball? They do much better. Hit the ball in front of you, meet it early is much better. That notice where you make contact with the ball. So it's this non-judgmental, just viewing. And then you just view it, you notice it, and then your body takes care of the rest. Visualization, that's Jack Nicklaus. And he said, I never hit a shot, even in practice, without having a very sharp, in-focus picture of it in my head. It's like a color moving. So he would clearly see what he wanted to happen. And visualization is important because that's the best way to get through to self. If self one wants to talk to self two, the best way to do it is through visualization. If there's something you want your body to do, it's best to imagine it and visualize it, because it's the self two is sort of beyond words. You should also embrace challenges. You shouldn't always just visualize everything going well. You should visualize difficulty. Visualize, if you're golfing, hitting when it's just starting to rain or there's a big wind, so you imagine all these difficult things. The other thing is interesting is that if you get into a bad habit, say you're in golfing, you're hitching your swing every now and then, or you're slicing over and over, it's not helpful to try to fight it. Well, I got to stop doing that. I got to focus on doing this or that. It's better to try to instill a new habit and just kind of let go of the old one. So you shift your focus to just doing something new. So I'm going to learn to hit straight, or I'm going to learn to, have the ball veer a different direction, instead of I'm going to stop doing something, because old habits are very ingrained. And then the last big tenet is to trust that self too. In order to do this visualization, in order to calm your mind, you have to have a belief that your body will be able to do it. Like, how the hell am I going to learn how to play a complex sport just by listening? Like, this guy would coach people and he wouldn't give them any direction. He would just hit a few and that would be it. And they would look at him, and then their body would sort of do things naturally just by observing. So you have to trust self to learn spontaneously from data. So instead of saying, do this, you say, oh, notice your knee bend when you hit. And self two takes that data and just gets better. Another way you can do is act the part. So they talked about in this book, tennis. So they had a person playing tennis, and then at one point they said, we were trying out for a part of a tennis pro, and we just need you to act like a tennis pro. So the camera's going to be only on you. No one's going to see where the ball goes. Just relax, have fun, hit, and they invariably do better. They hit the ball better, they hit it stronger, deeper, with more accuracy, because they're not thinking about it. They're just pretending to. It's the sort of fake it until you make it idea. And that works well with a lot of things. Music, it works if you play an instrument. So Emmitt Smith is one of the best running backs of all time. And he said, I used to imagine what it would be like to be Tony Dorsett or Walter Payton. I was imagining me, Emmitt Smith, doing exactly what they were doing. So he visualized, and that's how you get through to yourself too. So how can we translate any of this to sort of our lives beyond just sports and police work for that matter? Because we all deal with anxiety, pain, and all the other things that can get in our way. One of the best ways to deal with pain is non-judgmentally. Instead of saying, God damn it, that pain, it's driving me crazy, it hurts so bad, to actually kind of lean into it gently and accept it and say, what does it actually feel like? What's happening? Where is the pain? Is it getting worse? Is it going away? Is it moving? Just sort of sit back and watch it like a movie. And if you can do that without kind of pushing it away, sometimes the pain gets better. And if it doesn't get better, at least you're interacting it within a more productive way. And that's the same with emotions. So if you're feeling anxious or angry is a good example. If you're feeling angry at somebody, it's probably best to just feel that emotion, meaning I'm in a discussion with your spouse or a close friend, and you're fighting over keeping the house clean or whatever, and you're starting to get angry. It's better just to take a moment and think, where is this anger? What does it feel like? I'm feeling anger. What does it feel like? And then you say it feels like a knot in my stomach. It feels like a little pounding in my chest, and just kind of feel it. And it naturally just goes away on its own. Emotions don't last very long. But what happens is if you're not focused on what it actually feels like non-judgmentally, it starts to overwhelm you and make decisions for you. And then invariably you feed it. That's what keeps emotions going. Well, she did this and she did that, and why isn't, and you're constantly feeding it with self-one negative thinking. It's like putting gasoline on the fire and it just stays angry. And also being present focused is just naturally relaxing. So if you're on a police call, if you're thinking about, oh my gosh, this is what I can't deal with this person, or I have to get to my next call, or my boss is going to get mad at me if I don't do X, Y, and Z, and you're kind of piling up all those thoughts as opposed to just breathing and kind of being there, the interaction may go a lot better. And it's just, so breathing is important just because it's one way of many to stay present focused and to be non-judgmental. People don't judge their breathing, like, why am I breathing this way? What's going on? It's just more, it brings you, it's sort of a gateway to the present moment. You're not thinking about the future. You're not obsessing about the past. It forces you to sort of anchor into the present moment. And by breathing, I'm not meaning you totally focus on breathing and forget about the rest of the world. It's just more like an anchor to put you into the present and let your body, and more importantly, your training kind of take over. What gets in the way of the training is the thinking. You've already had all the training by the time you're out on a call, and it's best just to let the training do it. And that's both intellectual and physical training. It'll kick in on its own as long as you let it. And that's trusting yourself to heal, trusting yourself to calm down. And that's it. Thank you.